Hello, you beautiful people. Today we are going to be taking a look at the top 20 ranked fantasy players in head-to-head points leagues this season. So I saw that ESPN updated their head-to-head points rankings, and they're just complete dog shit. It seems like they just throw names into a hat and just sort of pick them out in a random order. I don't really understand. And if you're new to the channel, I made rankings at the start of the year, and we're just going to go ahead and take a look at where some of the guys are ranked at right now, where I rank them at, and then just sort of talk about if I think these guys are going to stay in the top 20, if I think they're going to fall off, whether I think their points are going to increase or decrease. Hopefully that explains a little bit about what my plan is here today, and we'll just go ahead and get started. So first off, no surprise here, Nikola Jokic. This is by total fantasy points. I just want to specify that these guys are ranked in terms of how many total points they've scored this year, because in a points league, that's really all you can. It's probably the best indicator of what you should look at in terms of determining a player's value, because you need them to play in games, man. The average doesn't really mean that much if they're like Joel Embiid and they're missing an exorbitant amount of games because of injuries. So anyway, back to it. Nikola Jokic, number one. No surprise, I had him ranked number one at the beginning of the year. I don't see that changing. The man is just broken for fantasy. It's absolutely ridiculous. He's averaging 60 fantasy points per game. It's just crazy, man. Nobody saw this coming. Everybody saw this coming, I should say, but 60 fantasy points per game, it's just a bit much. And I don't think that's going to change. He's clearly the best fantasy player by far, not really even close, and I highly recommend. If you drafted him, if you had the first pick in your draft, he's helping you win matchups every week. There's no way around it. So props to you. Hope you're loving the ride. All right, then we have, this is a huge surprise. The second ranked player in terms of total fantasy points at this point in the season is Dejounte Murray. And going into the season, I had Dejounte Murray ranked 28th, and even then I thought that was a little bit high, because I know plenty of you are probably familiar with Locked On Fantasy Basketball. He also was a bit hesitant on taking Murray anywhere near the top 30, but second ranked player, man, I can't argue with it, and I don't see it changing as well, as the funny part. His scoring's up, the assists are up, the rebounding's up. He's a triple double, he's on a threat to get a triple double every night. You can't really ask for much more from a fantasy perspective. Obviously, maybe if you wanted to create the perfect fantasy player, you'd add a few more threes to his game, but he's really mastered the pick and roll in terms of in the NBA this season. He just looks a lot more comfortable making reads out of it, and it's really translated to some crazy fantasy numbers. Is he going to finish as the number 2 ranked player in fantasy? Probably not, but at this point in the season, I don't see him falling out of the top 10. He's just been so consistent. He's the number 1 option on the Spurs, and I just don't see that changing. So props to you if you drafted Dejounte Murray. I actually drafted him 30th, I believe, in my 8 team, and I drafted Jokic first, so they are just carrying me to victory there. Then, of course, Stephen Curry 3rd. I had him ranked 5th coming into the season, so not too far off there. It's Curry, bro. Nobody thought the Warriors were going to be this good, I don't think. Best record in the league, I think it is right now. But yeah, Curry's been lighting it up, looking like prime MVP Curry. He has been on a bit of a slump lately, which, I don't think anyone in their right mind is worried about, because this is Steph we're talking about. We all know he's going to bounce back, so easily I think he finishes top 5 in terms of total points scored this year. I am not concerned at all. And yeah, not too much to say there. Then we got Giannis Antetokounmpo at 4. I had him ranked at number 2 in terms of total points, but he's been out with the Rona, so can't really fault him there. It's just affecting pretty much every team in the league. As you can see, these next 2 guys as well are in the health and safety protocols. But, when Giannis has played, he's been a cheat code as always. 53 fantasy points per game, easily going to finish top 5 as well. I don't have any concern there. And then the one we've been waiting for, probably my worst fantasy take of the year, is Kevin Durant. He is ranked number 5 right now, and I don't even want to talk about where I had him ranked in my rankings. I was worried about the injury risk with the Achilles. I stand by it. If I'd go back in time, I still wouldn't have drafted him, because I was very hesitant about drafting guys with previous injury histories. So I had him ranked 24th. And don't worry, at the end of the season, we'll make a video when it's all said and done and look at how shit my rankings were. But for now, still looking like a terrible take. I do think he probably finishes top 10 easily. He's also out with the Rona, and he doesn't look like the Achilles injury has slowed him down any. His minutes are through the roof. Brooklyn not having Kyrie was another thing I wasn't anticipating when I made the rankings. I made my rankings a month before the season started, so a lot of things changed. Namely, Zion, I had him on because that was before the news that he was going to miss time came out. So live and learn there, nothing you can do. But yeah, Kevin Durant take aging like milk. Feel free to drop a clown emoji in the comments, because I definitely deserve it for that one. Anyway, whatever. What can you do? We'll move on. 6th ranked is Trey Young, which I'm not too surprised about, because I did have him ranked 16th. I know some people weren't as high on him because they thought he might struggle with the new foul rules, but he's adjusted surprisingly well, and his fantasy value has not decreased any with them, as it has with some other notable superstars like a James Harden or Bradley Beal. Yeah, averaging 46.6 fantasy points per game. I do think he'll probably maintain around top 10 production. I don't know if he necessarily finishes in the top 10, but he's definitely going to be around there, so I don't really have any cause for concern in terms of trading him. So he's also in the protocol, so he's going to miss some time, which is going to hurt his total points per game, or total fantasy points for the season, I should say. But I mean, we can't really predict what players are going to miss time and what ones aren't at this point because it's just spreading like wildfire. Anyway, seventh, probably the most improved player this season. It's just ridiculous, man. Miles Bridges. Most leagues, he was probably drafted in the 80s, maybe the 90s, and he's the 7th ranked player in fantasy at this point in the season. Do I think he's going to stay top 10? I don't. If there's anyone on this list that I think is going to fall outside of it, it's Miles Bridges. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he's going to fall off a cliff or anything and do terribly, but I just think his production has been a little bit unrealistic. And I still think he's going to contribute, but he has sort of started to come back down to earth recently. His fantasy value, I think he was averaging like 45 fantasy points per game at the start of the season, or for the first bit there, and it has sort of fallen back down. He's averaging 39 right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if he falls outside of the top 20. But I mean, if you drafted him, you got to steal. Like, there's no way around it. Anyone that you draft in the 80s to 90s that can produce at this volume is just crazy, and it's definitely helping you win your league. So props to you if you got him there. And then at number 8, we have Jason Tatum, and I actually have him ranked number 8 at the start of the year. I should mention I didn't even rank Miles Bridges inside my top 50 going into the season. Was not expecting this at all, like most of you probably weren't. But yeah, I ranked Tatum at 8. He's currently sitting at 8th in terms of total points. And it's honestly kind of surprising given the start he's had to the season. He's been pretty inefficient in terms of scoring the ball. He has picked it up as of late. But yeah, he was having a really rough patch there, and it just sort of is a testament to his fantasy value when you can see that he's still managing to uphold top 10 value even when he was playing like below his usual standards. So I don't think that's going to change, obviously, as you can tell from my projections and where he's at now. I think he's pretty much a lock for top 10 unless some mysterious injury happens. So nothing to worry about there, no surprises, but just good to see. And we move on to number 9, Karl Anthony Towns. I had him ranked at 6, so not too far off. I mean, we'll see how it continues. But the man's pretty much built for fantasy, especially if you're in a categories league. That there isn't really anything that Cat is lacking into like the nth degree. But overall, his turnovers have been really high this season, and that has been hurting his value. But they've been getting a bit under control. They're still higher than you'd like, but he's sort of been able to work around that with his scoring numbers taking an increase. His assist numbers are a bit up. His rebounding rate's been solid. But yeah, on the season, if you're getting a center that can stretch the floor like Cat, is a solid rebounder, can play in the post, shoot free throws, you can't really ask for much more, man. He's pretty much a lock for top 10 as well in my eyes. Not too much to say about him. Then we move on to Anthony Day-to-Day Davis, who is ranked 10th right now. And he is someone that I ranked outside the top 20, and I stand by it for like reasons that we're currently seeing. I had him ranked 26th, and it wasn't anything against him. Like per game, he's been solid, but last season we were sort of starting to see a fall off, so I was wondering if it would translate to this season. But it was mainly just the injury concern with Anthony Davis. I mean, the dude falls on the floor every single possession, and he's just out with a sprained MCL right now. He's going to be reevaluated in 4 weeks, so he's probably going to miss around 12 games at the very minimum, and it's very hard to get back into the top 20 if you miss a ton of games like that, because some players are just going to be able to play in more games, going to be able to accrue more fantasy points, and Anthony Davis, I just don't see him maintaining top 20 value. Per game basis, obviously, but I just think total games played is really going to hurt his candidacy for top 20. But yeah, I mean, we all knew that going into the season. No surprises there. At 11 is Rudy Gobert, who is someone that I was very high on coming into the season. Probably, I think, a bit higher than most people just because I really value what he brings to a fantasy team in terms of his consistency. Because if you're new to the channel, I love guys that give you a high rebounding rate because it's just such an easy thing to rely on. Like, you don't really have to worry that Rudy Gobert's not going to grab at least 10 rebounds versus if you have another guy that is like an assist guy or a streaky shooter, maybe he's not going to score the ball efficiently one night, or maybe he's not going to get a lot of assists. Rudy Gobert, he's grabbing 10 rebounds guaranteed, and then the blocks, he's pretty much guaranteed 1 block per game. At the very least, he's averaging like 2 blocks per game on the season. And then the points are just a bonus, and he's had a few 20-point games. He's averaging 15 points per game on the season. And when you pair that with 15 rebounds and 2 blocks, it just gives you some really solid fantasy numbers. So I had him ranked 18th coming into the season. He's at number 11 right now, so very solid. I do think he'll stay top 20. And yeah, excuse me. Then we wanted Melo Ball, and he was someone I was also hesitant about ranking because I thought I was putting him a lot higher than I should. When like I saw what other people had to say about him, I had him ranked 20th, and he's currently ranked 12th. So, I mean, who knows? I was aware that he was going to have the ball in his hands, and the usage rate was going to be through the roof. I just wasn't expecting him to take this big of a leap. Obviously, I still thought he was going to take a leap if I ranked him inside my top 20. But the assist numbers are up, the scoring, the shooting is the biggest part. I didn't think his shooting was going to take as big a leap this quickly. I mean, I knew he was a very capable shooter, but yeah, averaging 20 points per game, 7.6 rebounds, 8 assists, and he averages around 2 steals a game, which is a very underrated part of his fantasy portfolio. But yeah, solid player. Sort of similar stat lines to Dejounte Murray, even though they are pretty, like, they're different players for sure. No question about it, how they operate and everything. But yeah, Melo's been a pleasant surprise this season, and I do have him staying inside the top 20. And then Chris Paul, the man that pretty much beats time's ass every single season. Every year I'm a bit skeptical about drafting him because of the age concerns. I'm like, maybe this is the year that they'll start relying on Devin Booker more. Chris Paul said, fuck that. He does not care. He keeps playing at an elite level for fantasy. As you can tell, as he's currently ranked, oh man, I've lost count here, 9, 10, 11, 12. He's ranked 13th. I had him ranked. Man, do I even want to say where I have him ranked and let loose the clown comments again? But I had him ranked 37th, which sounds terrible in hindsight. But I mean, if you had the same concerns I did about his age, he was projected around like 35th, I think, in terms of average draft position at the start of the season. But terrible take. I'm not even gonna lie. I thought maybe he'd slow down. Didn't want to risk it, but he's proving us wrong once again. This man is immortal. I don't understand him. He's a freak of nature, and props to Chris Paul if you drafted him, because he definitely got him pretty late, and it's definitely paying off for you. Oh, and I should mention, yeah, top 20 value. If he stays healthy, which he hasn't really had an injury history, it was just the age concerns, but he sort of put them to bed again. The Suns are relying on him. They got the best record, or one of the best records right now. I don't know if it's them or the Warriors at the time I'm recording this. Too lazy to go check, but yeah, I think he stays top 20 for sure. And then we have the love of my life. Don't tell my girlfriend. Domantas Sabonis. I mean, she's well aware. Domantas Sabonis is the love of my life. But anyway, I had him ranked 12th coming into the season. He's currently, 14th? I mean, it wasn't too far off. You guys know how I feel about him. I talk about him every video, man. So consistent. He has a few down games here and there. But I just really, overall in the season, I'm not concerned about his production in the slightest. I think he's a great fantasy player. I love what he brings to a fantasy team. The points, the rebounds, the assists for a big guy. It's just orgasmic, man. I love Sabonis. Can't say enough good things about him. If he gets traded, there are some rumors. Who knows? I don't really see his fantasy value decreasing that much, depending on where he goes. There's a lot of fantasy options, and I honestly, the odds that it would help his fantasy value probably are a bit higher than they are that it would hurt it, because the Pacers are just such a crowded team in terms of like who's taking shots on their team. And I think getting a new environment would probably give him a few more shot opportunities, but like I said, completely dependent on where he goes, and we have no way of really predicting that with any sort of accuracy, so it's whatever. But even if he stays on the Pacers, top 20 easily for me. Talk about him every year. No surprises there. And then next up, 15th, Jonas Valanciunas. I just want to take a moment to call out ESPN again, because you know where they had him ranked in terms of their rankings at the start of the season? He was like 125th, and I don't know why. I made a video on my sleepers I could win your drafts or win you your league, and Jonas Valanciunas was in that video. I had him ranked like 51st coming into the season. I wasn't like, he just missed outside of my top 50. But yeah, 15th. The only reason I had him lower is because, like I said, I recorded that before the Zion news came out, so I thought that might affect him a little bit. Doesn't matter. Who knows when Zion's coming back. But JV's been a double-double machine, averaging around 20 points per game on a depleted New Orleans roster. Absolutely. I don't know if he maintains top 20 necessarily, because, I mean, there is the risk if the Pelicans don't turn things around or start picking up some W's, maybe they'll sort of start to shut their big guys down at the end of the season. But I wouldn't panic or anything on JV, because we don't know what the mystery is surrounding Zion, when he's going to be back, how he's going to affect JV. I think obviously there's a few less shot attempts for JV, but I think he is still a top 35 player at like worst case scenario. So if you want to move him, I'm perfectly okay with it. But as we've just seen, like as I've already mentioned, from the lack of Zion news, I'm definitely not rushing into it or anything. And yeah, that's all I have to say about JV. Very solid player. It looks like I was pretty bang on about players I could win you your draft, because if you got him around the 50s, which is where I was taking him in my draft, because I was pretty confident I would get him then just because of where he was ranked, you're definitely reaping the benefits, man. Then we move on to Donovan Mitchell, 16. Donovan Mitchell every year. I mean, we're like, is he going to take the leap that we see him have in the playoffs? And it looks like this is the season, man. I had him ranked 22nd. He's currently 16th, so I wasn't too far off then. And it's mainly just been like consistently averaging 40 fantasy points. We all knew he was scoring, but his assist numbers have been more consistent this season. The scoring's a little bit more efficient, averaging 25 points per game. I don't think it's going to change. I think he's easily top 20 now. We've seen him work out the kinks in his game that were bringing his fantasy value down, and I'm pleasantly surprised that we're finally getting this state of Donovan Mitchell. Anyway, next up, 17th, Russell Westbrook. I had him ranked, 29th. I wasn't sure how the Lakers experiment was going to turn out with Westbrook. I thought maybe him and LeBron counteract each other a bit. I should have known, man. Should have known. Russell Westbrook, No matter what the situation is for a fantasy perspective, the dude contributes. Say what you want about him. He's got a lot of haters. Westbrook, we all know it. Very polarizing player. But he just fills up the stat sheet like no other guard can, and pretty much no other player in fantasy can, honestly, when he's at his absolute best. Triple-double, pretty much threat every night. And when we have LeBron and AD both missing extended time, like we have AD missing, like, what did I say, 4 weeks earlier, I think there's no way Westbrook's value doesn't just keep, like, maintain itself at the very worst, if not increase. He finished, like, top 5 in terms of total fantasy points last season, which I think a lot of people overlooked, because he just sort of went on, like, God mode for, like, the last half of the season, averaging, like, a triple-double, doing Westbrook things. As much as you might hate him, you got to admit, bro, for a fantasy player, he's pretty much built in a laboratory. You couldn't ask for much more. For a points league, I mean, categories league, he's absolutely killing your percentages, turnovers, and three-pointers. But, points league, he just makes up for it with sheer volume. So, not too much of a concern there. I think he is going to finish top 20. Just should specify that. And, yeah, he's ranked 17th right now. 18th, man, this one sucks. Just went down to the protocols. Fred VanVleet. I had him ranked 21st, so I was pretty close there so far. We'll see if it pans out the rest of the season. But yeah, before he went into the protocols, he was heating up as well. Like, he's already been good, but he was getting even better. Had 81 fantasy points against Golden State, albeit it was a depleted Golden State resting their starters, but still, 81 fantasy points isn't something to write off. 56 against Brooklyn, 54 against New York. And this is what I was expecting from Fred VanVleet. I think a lot of people were skeptical about taking him inside the top 20 or even around then. But I just thought, like, with Kyle Lowry out of the picture, he's starting point guard, doesn't have to share the backcourt with anyone of too much significance. Siakam was missing time, and the Raptors just haven't been able to get a fully healthy starting lineup out there at all right now. They've just been various injuries or people going into the health and safety protocols. Overall, if you're a Raps fan, it's probably been rough just not seeing your team be able to, like, have everyone out there at a single point in time. Now the protocols are hitting everybody. I mean, you're missing Barnes, Siakam, VanVleet, Gary Trent. It's just pain, man. I'm sorry to my Raps fans. I hope it gets better before it gets worse. But yeah, Fred VanVleet, I do think he stays top 20 whenever he gets back from the protocols. Don't really see any concern for injury. I mean, outside any higher than any any higher than any other player. And I do think it maintains itself. So if you drafted him around the top 20, you're probably getting what you expected. And I mean, he's called Steady Freddy for a reason, bro. So you can't ask for much more. All right, then 19th. This also did not age well. We all knew they were making new foul rules. Some people were more hesitant than others that James Harden was going to suffer. I also made this before Kyrie was announced that he wasn't playing in the season, which I thought would help James Harden numbers, but he is currently ranked 19th. I had him ranked 4th. I think he does still finish top 20. He is out in the protocols right now, but if we look at his fantasy points per game, as much as people are mad that his scoring numbers are down, he is averaging 45 fantasy points per game. I think people are just overlooking that because of the lack of scoring. We're used to him putting up 30-point games regularly. And he sort of shifted to more of a playmaking role, man. And while, mostly people get caught up in the points perspective, you got to look at the assists, man. They add up. When he's averaging like 10 assists per game, 20 points, 8 rebounds, that's still a top 20 fantasy player easily. I still think he was picking it up more as of late as well. So I do think out of everyone in this top 20, I probably think James Harden could finish top 10 in terms of total points per game. Once he gets out of the protocols, I think he is going to start figuring it out. He has become more comfortable with the rules, sort of started to get back to his game. And I think I'm pretty confident that he is top 20. So I'm not going to say buy low on James Harden because he's averaging 45 fantasy points per game. I doubt you're going to be able to buy low on him. That ship has sailed. But overall, I think that does maintain, and I'm not too worried about him. And then lastly, 20th. I actually ranked him exactly. Oh, I ranked him 19th. Damn. So I was pretty close with Julius Randle. And he's been shit. No way around it. He's been absolutely shit recently. Has not been playing up to his standards of last season. And, this was the concern with him. He takes really inefficient looks. That's pretty much his entire shot selection is just inefficient mid-range fadeaways, pull-ups, shooting over guys. That's just his game. He's got some Kobe-itis going on. You wish you would just see him, go downhill, attack the rim, bully ball. But, he likes playing on the perimeter. I don't know. I don't think that's going to change. He's their main guy on offense. But the thing is, he's still top 20 in spite of playing like shit. And you know why? It's because Tibbs runs this man into the ground. He plays 35 minutes a night, puts up 20 points in his sleep. Even if he's playing poorly, shooting the ball inefficiently, he's still going to give you 20 points. And then the rebounding rate's solid. He's averaging 10 rebounds per game on the season. A few assists here and there. And the thing with Randle is, just because he's getting so many minutes, and if he has any night where he can put the ball in the basket efficiently, he's going to go off for fantasy. There's no way around it. So you're pretty much just banking that he's going to get hot. Oh, man, I'm voice cracking all over the place. This is what happens when I do these continuous videos. But you know what? That's just how it be. hard to talk for 20 minutes straight. That's just whatever. Anyways, finish off the video. Julius Randle, I still am confident that he's going to finish top 20, sheer volume only. He's averaging the lowest per game basis than anyone in this top 20. He's averaging 36.8 fantasy points per game. So if you wanted to buy low on Julius Randle, I'm okay with it. I don't think his value takes a seismic increase, but just the fact that if he gets hot or if he starts playing like he did last season, you're going to be getting a top 10 fantasy player just because of the sheer number of minutes he's playing, how often the ball is in his hands. The assist numbers are all right. They're not as high as you'd like them to be, but 5 assists for a power forward, nothing to write off. And then the rebounding and the scoring, like I mentioned. So yeah, I do think Julius Randle still finishes top 20 in spite of his recent shit play because, like I mentioned, there's just something about having the ball in your hands that often and playing that many minutes. You're just going to, in a points league, you can't ask for much more. That's the very baseline. And it's if he's going to play this trash and be top 20, anything above it, it's just going to be a blessing. So I do think he finishes top 20. And that's going to do it for the video. I'll just do a quick recap. Any guys that I think are going to fall outside of the top 20. Miles Bridges, I do think he'll probably fall. Anthony Davis, I'm pretty confident that he's going to fall out just because of missed games. And then outside of that, maybe you can make a case for Julius Randle falling outside because there are a few guys below him like Paul George, Zach LaVine. Jared Allen and Tyrese Halliburton are surprisingly ranked 21st and 22nd in terms of total points. Will that maintain themselves? I don't know. I don't think it will for Halliburton for sure, but I don't want to make this video too long to talk about the top 50 for everybody, so we'll just wrap it up here. I want to say thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate all the support we've been getting. Hope this helps you guys out in terms of looking at top 20 players. And if you want to see my updated rankings for a top 50, I was thinking about maybe doing that for a Christmas video now that I got a lot more time on my hands to devote to YouTube. Maybe I'll update my rankings and make a top 50 projections for the start of the season, but who knows, they could be absolutely dog shit like my rankings were at the start of the season. So it's whatever. Let me know in the comments if that's something you guys would be interested in. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. And as always, I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.